In a time where many communities are facing challenges between the law enforcement and the community they have sworn to serve, I'm glad that here in Stockton, although we're not perfect, we strive to build bridges, understanding, and communication between our law enforcement and our public. I tell people all the time that Stockton has the most forward-thinking police chief in this nation, Chief Eric Jones. And he is committed to building a better police force. Our police department not only does procedural justice and implicit bias training, but they go around the nation training other departments on implicit bias and procedural justice. And the Officer of the Year this year, Officer Robert Johnson, really illustrates a lot of points and principles of our police department. Officer Johnson has worked in our police department for 21 years. He's an officer that gives back regularly to the community and mentors other officers. And in September, Officer Johnson was called for a call that I'm sure he'll remember for quite some time. The call took place a few blocks away from Shipley Park. The officer found a battered 77-year-old man, a victim of an armed robbery. The elderly man was riding his bike, which he used to sell ice cream. Meanwhile, a younger individual attacked this older man, pushed him off his bike, took his money, and robbed him at gunpoint. And after being robbed, this gentleman was scared to communicate with our officers because he was not an American citizen. But when Officer Johnson heard the details of what had taken place, he knew the right thing to do. He bought some ice cream and told the man to keep the change. At the end, the ice cream man had more money than he had lost. But more importantly, Officer Johnson was able to build the trust and respect of that man and was able to get him to corroborate to help make our community safer. Officer Johnson is just one of several fine examples of the men and women who serve our public as public safety officers, and he also illustrates a fundamental value of our community, that everyone in Stockton matters, and that we are safer and better when everyone in our community participates. And to that end, that's why I'm proud our department has not and will not waver on our simple policy, that we will not stop, detain, or question anyone solely because of suspected immigration status. At one point, Stockton had one of the most understaffed police departments in this country. But today, we have more officers than we've ever had at 457, thanks in large part to Measure A and B and then taxpayers stepping up time and time again to support improving our city. So thank you. This year, overall, violent crime is down, along with property crime and homicides. In fact, our non-fatal shootings are down 40%. Despite these trends, however, we refuse to rest on our laurels, and we must continue to be at or below the state average. Because as we learned after that horrific shooting on Mother's Day, we still have much work to do. So today we remember Gina Zong, Joe Lord, and Kayleen Lord, and vow to continue our efforts to make Stockton the safe community that we all deserve. And I'm so proud of this council because last year we heard that despite overall crime going down, homicides have went up. And instead of pointing fingers, instead of laying blame, we sprung into action. 1 month, literally after the December homicide number was released, we had a robust discussion about bringing a strategy to complement our existing ceasefire and other violence prevention efforts. And the council, on a 6-1 vote, decided to bring in a program called Advanced Peace, one that doesn't supplant, but complements our existing law enforcement strategy by focusing, targeting, and building relationship with those who are most likely to be victims or perpetrators of violent crime. But the icing on top is that the city didn't even have to pay for the strategy to get safer. That foundations, philanthropists, and private dollars stepped up and said, you know what, Mayor Tubbs, I believe Stockton can be a safe city, and I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. And I say that the timeline, again, 1 month after a meeting, because, and city staff will tell you, I'm one of the most impatient people you'll ever meet. And I always complain about how government moves so slow. But in this instant, we sprung into action and moved quickly. And I think that goes to show you how the city is improving. that we're looking at the needs of our community, we're setting priorities, and then we're moving quickly and aggressively to address them. In addition to Advanced Peace, we also have a program called Ceasefire. And Ceasefire is a program that we've been using since 2012 that's a partnership-based approach to reducing gun violence. And I love the Ceasefire program because it teaches us the power of relationships and the fact that no investment is too small. So I'm gonna give you a little factoid. Did you know every time there's a homicide in our community, it costs us between systems $400,000? Every time there's a shooting, it costs us a homicide $400,000. Every time. Yet some will say we should give up on individuals who may be caught in life's of crime. Some may say we're wasting our time. Some would say it's not a good use of taxpayer dollars. But the narrative is simple. We are already paying. We're paying in dollars. We're paying in trauma. We're paying in kids going to sleep listening to gunshots at night. We've been paying for the past 30 years. So I think now it's time to make smarter investments and invest in the individuals who are most likely to be driving this violent crime. So there's a young man that illustrates sort of this idea of the fact that we can't give up on anyone in our community. His name is Brad. Brad lived most of his life in a single-parent home in some of the toughest areas in North Stockton. He looked up to his older siblings and friends from the community, and many of those guys were into stealing, robbing, drug dealing, gangbanging. And without proper community interventions, it was only a matter of time before Brad would follow the path of his older family members and friends. So as a teenager, he started off with petty thefts. But as the years went by, he eventually worked his way to armed robberies. And because he was never caught, he never faced the consequences for his actions. Brad still ended up graduating from high school, but that summer he was arrested for an armed robbery, and his daughter was born while he was in prison. When he was released, he was ready to start over. However, he was very concerned. He realized the challenges he had in going back into the same environment that caused the lifestyle he had entered into. And besides going back to the same environment, Brad had many other obstacles: finding employment, gaining visitation and custody rights, finding a place to live. When he was first released, he was thankful to have his mother by his side to support his goal of changing his lifestyle. And in 2013, Brad attended his first Ceasefire call-in hosted by our Office of Violence Prevention. There, he ran into a peacekeeper, Stanley Thomas, and Brad had met Stan during his football days. After hearing the Ceasefire message and speaking with Stan, Brad thought the Peacekeeper program would be able to assist him with leaving his old ways behind. Shortly thereafter, Brad lost his two older brothers to gang violence. But rather than revert to his old ways, Brad tried his hardest to honor his brother by working towards his dreams of being a good father, husband, son, and chasing his dream of getting a career in music. In 2016, Brad was able to find a full-time job to provide opportunities for him and his family. And now Brad is off parole, married with 4 children. You've been busy, Brad, working full-time, and decided he wanted to start giving back to his community. But then Brad had a question. He said, what can I do to do more for the community? So he became part of our Violence Prevention Leadership Council. And now Brad wants to pursue a career as a peacekeeper with the Office of Violence Prevention. And I share Brad's story in depth today because his story is familiar, too familiar, for far too many young people in our focus areas throughout our city. His story also illustrates what's possible when we don't give up on people, when we don't throw people away, and also illustrates how difficult it is to break cycles of crime and poverty. And it's not possible to do without relationships, support, intervention, and help. So Brad, to me, you represent the hope I have for many in this city. You are an example of the change that can occur only and only if we as a city are willing to extend a hand up, invest in our people, and believe in second chances. You make me proud to take risks and believing that Stockton can be a safer city, and that a key to that safety is investing in the communities and in the young men most impacted by the crime. So Brad, thank you. And over the past several years, we've also developed neighborhood betterment teams led by our police department to work on the issues in neighborhoods like the one Brad grew up in. These communities, Kentfield, Midtown Magnolia, Gleason Park, Fox Creek, and North Manchester, have needs, however, that go far beyond the police department. These communities need jobs. These communities need opportunity. These communities need grocery stores. These communities are oftentimes not just high in crime, but high in everything negative and low in everything positive. So in the coming years, I challenge myself, the city council, city staff, and the community to come up with a strategy for these 6 focus areas, especially since these areas have been long neglected and have been focus areas and areas with high crime rates for at least the last 30 years. Crime is a symptom of lack of opportunity found in these communities, and we must do something more than expect Eric Jones and the 457 officers to be the answer to every community ill facing those communities. Additionally, at our budget meeting yesterday, the council called for a proposal to expand ShotSpotter gun detection technology to all the focus areas to help stabilize and get them safer as we as a community advance a strategy to bring them up to other communities in our city. Furthermore, over the past 4 to 5 years, a group of community partners have been working in the South Stockton area, and they've seen significant progress. Now they're extending to the Midtown Magnolia area, and we must extend our focus to the other areas in the city to create communities of opportunities so Brad's kids, don't have to go through what he did. So again, crime's an issue in our community. We have more officers than we've ever had before, but we could have 1,000 officers and 2,000 officers, but if we don't couple those officers with opportunity, we will continue to struggle with cyclical issues of generational poverty and violence in this city. So until we get serious, we roll up our sleeves, we spend the time and the dollars to figure out a strategy, year after year after year after year, we'll be having the same conversation. In Stockton, I think it's time we turn the page.